Hello. In this lecture, we are going to talk about some further elements of the harmonic vocabulary, beginning with the dominant with a substituted sixth. Let's take this example. In this example, we see three progressions with the same chords. The first chord and the last chord are always the same. Let's take a look at the middle one. The first one is 2-6, the second one is 5, and the last one is our tonic chord. Example B begins with the same chord, 2 in first inversion, 5. This is an escape tone. The labeling will be the same, 2, 6, and then 5. This is an escape tone and the tonic chord. And the last one is dominant with a substituted sixth. The chord is actually, if you look at the pitches, this is 3. This is an A minor chord. And in F major, 2-6, and this would be then 3. In first inversion, and the last one is tonic. If you look at the progression, you will see that this doesn't make sense. And also the oral perception of the chord is not 3, not A minor. We hear the chord as a dominant chord. This is actually a dominant with substituted 6. Instead of this G, we have an A. We can think of the chord as if there is an imaginary G, which we don't hear in this chord. We hear only the escape tone. I'm going to play this one. First this, after that the other one. And now without G. It is very difficult to explain the chord theoretically because what we see in the notes and what we hear, what we perceive are different from each other. We see the 3 chord, but we hear the dominant chord. And we call this note, which is the 6th of the chord, as substituted 6th. The 6th substitutes for the 5th of the chord. So, and this is the cleaner labeling. Everything is the same as I explained. 3 times the same progression. And in the last one, we have dominant with a substituted 6th. Let's analyze this example. Let's have a listen first. The excerpt is in D major. It begins with 5 with the dominant chord in third inversion. After dominant chord, we have an unusual progression. Instead of going to the tonic chord or to the 6th degree, after that we hear 7 of 2. If you look at the notes, we have F sharp, A, D sharp, and F sharp. This is a D sharp diminished 7th, which belongs to E minor, and E minor is our 2nd degree, and here we see the E minor. This is 2. And in the next measure, we have once again the dominant chord, this time in root position, and after that a deceptive progression, 6. This is the B minor chord, and 2-6, and This is, if we take a look at the notes, we hear A, C sharp, and F sharp. Actually, what we have is F sharp minor, but the function, its function is 5 with a substituted sixth. And then the resolution to the tonic. At this point, I'd like to explain a harmonic usage. In the second part of the example, we have a very regular progression. A deceptive progression first, and then after 6, 2, 5, and 1. Everything is usual. But here in the first half, we have an unusual usage. We call such usages retrogression. This is a progression and this is a retrogression. Why retrogression? Because the progression goes in the opposite direction. Sometimes composers use such retrogressions in order to create an unusual feeling in the harmony. If you only use regular progressions, then after a while it can become uninteresting. So it is also very common that we hear in the works, in the literature, such progressions which are not natural, which are not conventional. And in this case, 2 after 5, we call it retrogression. This is the analysis by Koska. Everything is the same. Let's listen to it once again. Another example, this time in minor mode. Let's listen to it. It is by Schumann, and the piece or the excerpt is in D minor. At the beginning, we hear 2 pitches. Sometimes we have such uncertain situations in the music in which we are not sure how to label the chord. This one could be 3 if we imagine that there is a C, which we don't hear. Or it could be tonic chord in first inversion. If we imagine that there is a D. Let's skip it for the moment and take a look at the following chords. The second one is pretty clear. It is 7 in first inversion and 5-7 in root position and 6. A deceptive progression here. And after that, the next one is also clear. This is 2, half diminished, 6-5. And here we have A, C sharp, and F natural. This is actually an F augmented chord. That means 3 augmented in first inversion, but we hear it as dominant with a substituted sixth. That means this F substitutes for the E here. Actually, the chord should be, but what we have is and then resolution to the tonic chord. As I said, it is difficult to explain the chord, why we label it as 5 with a substituted 6 and not as 3 augmented in first inversion. First of all, if you would label it as 3, it wouldn't make sense. This is the first reason. We have 2, and after that 3, which is unusual, and then another unusual progression. The composers can use unusual progressions, but then we hear them also unusual. But if we listen to this example, we hear a very natural progression. And this is the second reason we hear the chord as a dominant chord, as if this F wants to go to E like an appoggiatura. Then we will hear the resolution, but it skips the E, the real chord tone, and goes directly to the tonic. Because of the same reason, it would be better to label the first chord also as the first inversion tonic chord, although it is unusual actually. If we have only 2 pitches, if we have only a third, an interval of a third, then we would add the 5th automatically, not the 6th. This is not usual, but this is an important part of harmonic analysis. It is not always 2 plus 2 makes 4. We have to interpret the situation. As you see, after that we have a 7 chord. Then it doesn't make much sense to label the first chord as 3. 3, 7, 5. It doesn't make much sense. So it would be more suitable to choose first inversion tonic triad here. This is the analysis by Koska. Let's listen to it once again. The substituted 6th can also be used in a dominant 7th chord, like in this case. This is an F7 chord with a substituted 6th. That means instead of C, instead of 5th of the chord, we have a D here. If we use this chord, the substituted 6th, with a dominant 7th chord, we should be careful about one thing. The substituted 6th should be above the 7th of the chord. Otherwise, this is the second example. You see here not used. Here we have the 7th on the top and then the substituted 6th below it. This is not a good sound. Let's listen to it. Now I'm going to play the first one and then the second one. So avoid the second one and use the substituted 6th, always above the 7th. Let's take a look at this example. It is taken from a piano piece by Schumann. The piece is in B-flat major. And the first chord is a C dominant 7th on F pedal. It is then, if we hear pedal, then we cannot write the bass position of the chord because the bass is in an anchor tone, 5/7 of 5. If you take a look at this chord, we will see F, A, E flat. It looks like an F dominant 7th, but instead of C, we hear a D. That makes the chord 5 with a substituted sixth. And then we hear the resolution. Actually, this is the tonic chord, but with a pedal 4. First we hear 4. And then it resolves to the tonic chord. We can assume that those pitches are appoggiatures or suspensions or whatsoever. For example, E flat, this could be a suspension of D, and G flat is an appoggiatura or passing note. It doesn't matter, those are embellishments. The target is F, and the target of E flat is D, etc. And this is the analysis by Koska. Everything is the same, and you see here, this is actually, we can assume that this is the tonic chord with a minor 4 in second inversion as embellishment. Let's listen to it once again. From another point of view, we can regard this chord actually as a 13th chord with an omitted 5th, 9th, and 11th. It is not about correct or wrong. In some books you will see this explanation 513, and in some books you will see this labeling 5-7 with a substituted 6. In Koska's book, the book which we are following, this is the labeling of the chord. We talked about the dominant with a substituted sixth, and now we are going to talk about the dominant with a raised fifth. It is basically a chromatic alteration, upwards alteration of the fifth of the dominant chord. In this example, we are in A major, and the fifth of the chord is B. And we expect the resolution to A major, to the tonic chord. What if we raise the fifth of the chord? We get a dominant with a raised fifth, like in this case. We can also use it in a dominant seventh chord. And you see in this case we double the third, because the raised fifth should move up by step, and the seventh of the chord should also move down by step. So at the end we have to double the third of the chord, and the chord, the tonic chord, will be incomplete. It is not used in minor mode because B sharp, the raised fifth of the dominant chord, and the third of the tonic chord is the same note. Let's hear it. But also the dominant seventh version, the sound is not especially ideal. As a general rule, if you raise a member of a chord chromatically, then it should move in the direction of the alteration. B, B sharp, and it has to move to C sharp. And in minor, we cannot apply this rule, so it is not used in the minor. This excerpt is taken from the Ninth Symphony, from the third movement of the Ninth Symphony by Beethoven. This is a very slow excerpt, and here is the dominant with a raised fifth. The excerpt is in B flat major, and here we have the dominant chord F. Also here E flat, first F, then in the second half it becomes dominant seventh. And here the third and first we have the regular fifth and then the raised fifth. And it continues also in the following measure and with an anticipation of the pitches of the tonic chord. It ends with the tonic chord. This is the analysis by Koska, and you see here dominant chord. Dominant, that means not augmented seventh, that means an augmented triad and a minor seventh. Augmented triad because with the alteration of the fifth we get an F augmented triad, and then if you write only 7, that means an added minor seventh. So let's listen to the excerpt. Maybe you have already noticed that the dominant with a raised fifth in major mode and the dominant with a substituted sixth in minor mode is actually the same sonority, but there is a difference in the resolution. Let's listen to the A example. As I already mentioned, if you raise a pitch chromatically, then it should continue in the same direction. D became D sharp, and then it should move to the E. On the other hand, let's listen to the resolution of the dominant with a substituted sixth in minor mode. Because the sixth of the chord, the substituted sixth, is appoggiatura of the fifth or escape tone. Anyway, it belongs to the fifth. It moves down. This is typical conventional resolution of the dominant with a substituted sixth. Let's take a look at this example. Let's listen to it first. This is an interesting example. The second part, the last measure of the excerpt is in D flat major, and we also hear D flat chord and then A flat dominant seventh, which is the dominant chord of D flat major. This is what we hear in D flat major. But the first half, the beginning of the excerpt, seems to be in a different key. We have G sharp, D sharp, and B sharp, which is G sharp major. And if we take a look at this point, we have also the seventh of the chord. But we don't have D sharp. Instead of D sharp, we have E natural here. Actually, the key is C sharp minor at the beginning, And at the end, the tonic is the same. The tonic is still C sharp or D flat and harmonically spelled. As we know from our previous lecture video, enharmonic spellings can be applied for practical reasons. Instead of C sharp major, Chopin preferred D flat major because in D flat major we have 5 flats, but in C sharp major we have 7 sharps. That means D flat major is more practical. But the interesting point is, if you look at the chord, instead of D sharp, we see E. We would label it as dominant with a substituted sixth, but if we consider the resolution, E goes upwards to F. Remember the resolution of the dominant with a substituted sixth, it is downwards. It is always downwards. But the resolution of the dominant with a raised fifth is upwards. And we have exactly this situation here. E goes upwards. Actually, this is not E, this is D double sharp, which makes the chord dominant with a raised fifth instead of dominant with a substituted sixth. This is also an example of enharmonic spelling for a practical reason. This is the analysis by Koska. And you see this is the dominant with a raised fifth. And the indication is C sharp or D flat, major or minor. We don't know yet because we have only the dominant chord, which is the same in both cases. And without writing any new key because the tonic is the same, only the spelling changes, he continues with the tonic chord. And we see here also a reduction, textural reduction. Everything is written in D flat major instead of C sharp, major or minor. And we see once again E natural here. In this case, it is the correct notation, also theoretically correct notation because the chord is A flat 7 now instead of G sharp 7. Let's listen to it once again. Here is another example taken from the string quartet by Haydn. Let's listen to it first. In terms of analysis, we have two options. Either we analyze the passage in E flat major and say this is B flat major chord. This is 5. And we have also here the same chord, 5 this time in first inversion. And here B flat augmented chord with F sharp. Actually 7, also 7. That means 5 plus 6, 5. And as usual, the raised fifth moves up and then we have our tonic chord. This is one option. The other option would be, maybe it would be better because of this A natural here, which indicates B flat major instead of A flat, E flat major. We analyze the excerpt in B flat and we say this is the tonic chord. And here tonic chord in first inversion, then it becomes 5 plus 6, 5 of 4 and then 4. In such a short excerpt we cannot be sure. It depends on the previous sections and on the continuation of the excerpt. However, this is the analysis by Koska. He preferred to analyze the excerpt in B flat major, and you see here this is a dominant the dominant chord with a raised fifth. Let's listen to it once again. Another string quartet excerpt, this time by Schubert. Let's listen to it. Once again, we have two options. My preference would be to analyze the passage in D major, beginning with 5, 6, 5 of 5, because this is E7 chord. You can check the pitches D and G sharp. And here we have A7 in the third inversion, which is our 5 chord, dominant chord. And then here we have D major, which is the tonic chord in first inversion, in root position, 5-3. We should write both. And here, once again, 5, 6, 5 this time. 1. And here 5, instead of E, we have E sharp, which makes the chord the dominant with a raised fifth. And 4-2, the bass position, and 1-6. This would be my preference. Let's listen to it. And please pay attention to the last chord. The important part is, do you hear the last chord as a tonic chord or as something else or as another function? Let's listen to it. In my opinion, this is the tonic chord and the passage should be analyzed in D major. But for some reason, I don't know why, Koska preferred to analyze the passage in A major. He begins with 5, and then after that 5 of 4 and 4. The progression doesn't make sense, having 5 of 4. Okay, they both have the same root note, 1 and 5 of 4 is the same, but after that having 4, 5, 4, something doesn't fit to the convention. And also staying on 4 for a long time. But I don't know, I don't agree with this analysis. I would prefer to analyze the passage in D major. So let's listen to it once again. Until now, we talked about triads and seventh chords. Triads are the basic material, the basic sonority of the tonal music, and the seventh chords are their first extension. And now we are going to talk about 9th, 11th, and 13th chords. As you know, the tonal system, the chord structures in tonal music are based on tertian structure. We call it tertian. That means constructed by thirds. We have only diatonic thirds. If we juxtapose two thirds, then we get a triad. If we add another third, then this is a seventh chord. If we extend the seventh chord for another third, then we have a ninth chord, etc. 11th, 13th, and this is the last one. If we add another third, this is the root of the chord. The circle is completed, so there is no 15th chord. True 11ths and 13ths are rare before Impressionism, which began in the late 19th century. Ninths occur throughout the tonal era, but the ninth of the chord often can be analyzed as a non-chord tone and usually disappears before the chord resolves. This is the difference between a real ninth chord and an apparent ninth chord. For example, here, let's listen to the excerpt. Once again, it was a very short excerpt. What we hear is a 5 flat 9 chord. The excerpt is taken from the piano sonata, first piano sonata by Beethoven, by the way, and we hear this chord. But it disappears before the chord resolves into the tonic chord. It moves to the root of the chord and then an arpeggiation within the dominant 7th chord and then resolves. In this case, we don't call it a real ninth chord. We can show it in our analysis, but we should know this is not a real dominant ninth. This is a similar example. We are in E minor, and this is the tonic chord, and this is 5. This is 5. This measure is also 5, but we see the flat 9 here. This is flat 9. But it is only the arpeggiation. Once again, it disappears before the chord resolves to the tonic chord. In this case, also, we don't call it a real dominant. This is the analysis. We can show it in our, and we should show it actually because it is a chord member, but we should know it is not a real ninth chord yet. Let's listen to the excerpt. In music, nothing appears suddenly in the history. Everything has a development process. First, we had only triads, and then through some non-chord tones, we heard 7th chords, then real 7ths, and then such examples of 9th chords. And in Romantic era, beginning with Schumann, we hear real 9th chords. The excerpt is in A minor, and the excerpt begins with 5 flat 9 chord. And this is a real 9th chord because the 9th of the chord remains present until the resolution. And as the 7th of the chord, which is here, the 7th of the chord, also the 9th of the chord resolves always down by step. This is also a rule. Let's listen to this excerpt. And the analysis by Koska. In minor mode, we show also in major mode if the interval between root and the 9th is minor, we show it as flat 9. If the interval is major 9, we show it only as 9. Let's listen to it once again. The examples until that point were the examples of dominant ninths, but we can also have them on other degrees than dominant. For example, here. Let's listen to the excerpt first. This was also by Schumann, and the piece is, or the excerpt is in A minor. And here it begins with 5, E major, and then this is 7 or 5, which is a D sharp, diminished 7th, and after that it goes to 5 in 5/7 chord in third inversion and the resolution into 1. And here this is a D minor ninth. And you see this E, which is the ninth of the chord, remains present until the resolution into 5. And then the resolution. It doesn't matter which quality we use. We can use the 7th chords, 9th chords, 11. The harmonic progression conventions are always the same. After 4, 9th, 11th, no matter what, we should move to 2 or to 5 or to 7. And this is the analysis by Koska. Let's listen to it once again. The symbols which we use in the Roman numeral analysis are chosen according to 2 criteria. First, write the Roman numeral that reflects the triad type. Lowercase Roman numeral for minor chords, for example, D minor, and uppercase for major triad, for example, E major. And then we add the number, only 9 for major ninth and flat 9 for minor ninth. Let's say this is a D minor ninth. If we spell the chord will be then D, F, A, C, and E. And we see the interval between the root and the ninth of the chord is a major 9. So we write only the number. But here, if we spell an E, dominant ninth, the chord will be with G sharp. If the mode is minor, of course, in A minor, the ninth of the chord will be F natural, so the interval will be minor ninth. And we should write it as flat 9. The inversions of ninth chords in the literature are rare. A useful, if unscientific, solution is to give in parentheses the figures used for inversions of 7th chords. So this is 4/9 in D minor, and this is its inverted version. Uninverted and inverted. So we write 9. In the parentheses, we should write the bass position symbol of the 7th chord. If we ignore the 9th of the chord, then this is the 7th chord, and in the bass we have the 5th. That means this is the second inversion, 4, 3. And here we have a 5-9 chord, also in D minor. And here it's inversion. And as you see, the third is in the bass. Then we write the same Roman numeral in parentheses 6-5. So this is a cleaner demonstration with bass position symbols in parentheses. As I said, the inversions are rare in the literature, but still we have a couple of examples, and this is one of them. The piece begins with a 9th chord, 5, 9, and we see here the 9th of the chord. And then we are going to hear some inversions. This is the analysis by Koska. And you see 5-9 and then the inversion shown in parentheses with the bass position symbol of the 7th chord. Let's listen to the excerpt. The final topic of this lecture is the common tone diminished 7th chord. The definition sounds a little too complicated. The common tone diminished 7th chord is a diminished 7th chord that progresses to a major triad or dominant 7th chord, the root of the major triad or dominant 7th chord is the same as one of the notes of the diminished 7th chord. It sounds too complicated, but if I show you an example, I'm sure you will understand it more easily. Here we have a G major chord in first inversion. By the way, this is not lead sheet symbol. In lead sheet symbols, that means something else. That means a major chord, major triad with an added major sixth interval. For example, G, B, D, and E. But this is for demonstration purposes. In analysis, we use sometimes, instead of Roman numerals, the chord names, if we don't refer to a particular key. So here, what is the root of this chord? It is G. And this G, we can find this G also in the diminished 7th chord. And the sound is very smooth. If we try to analyze the chords with Roman numerals, we won't have success. Because if we say this is G major, okay, then this is the tonic chord. How can I label this? It could be, for example, 7 of 3. But having tonic chord after 7 of 3 doesn't make sense. Or maybe we can say this is 7 of 5. If we assume this is C sharp, diminished 7th, and this is an enharmonic spelling of B flat. But once again, having tonic chord after 7 of 5 doesn't make sense. You cannot find any working Roman numeral for those chords. So, we call this chord common tone diminished 7th. This is just an embellishing chord. It is here not for functional purposes, it is here for embellishment, and the only connection between them is this G. They share the same note. And this common tone should be the root of the triad. And also, this is the same situation, only with the seventh added. It is the same. The root, look at the root, this is G. And there should be a chord, a diminished seventh chord, which contains this G. The spelling doesn't matter. You can spell the chord also enharmonically. It doesn't have to be A sharp diminished seventh. It could be C sharp diminished seventh, or it could be E diminished seventh, or it could be G diminished seventh. It doesn't matter. The sound is always the same. And the only thing we care in this case is the sound. And the labeling is, as I showed, common tone, CT for common tone, diminished seventh. Here are a couple of examples in B flat major. Let's try them. The first one begins with B flat major chord, and the second one is a C sharp diminished seventh and turns back to B flat major. So the first chord is tonic chord in first inversion, and also the last chord is tonic chord. If you try to analyze also this chord with Roman numerals, it will not give a satisfying result. We can try it. I mentioned it already. We can say this is 7 of 3. But you see, it doesn't make sense. We can say it is E diminished seventh in third inversion. So instead of D flat, it is written as C sharp, but doesn't matter. We saw some enharmonic spellings for practical reasons. But the problem is functional. Having the tonic chord after 7 of 5 doesn't make sense. We will have the same problems also in the following chords. For example, here we have 5, 6, 5, and also the last chord 5, 6, 5 in B flat major. How can we label the chord between them? This is written as B diminished seventh. We can also assume this is G sharp diminished 7. It wouldn't change anything. You can try it, but you will not find any Roman numeral for this chord which gives a satisfying harmonic progression. It is also true for this one. We have 4 in first inversion, and here we have 5, 6, 5, and then the tonic chord. The problem is this chord. You can try to analyze it, but you will not find a satisfying Roman numeral for this. So we label those chords as common tone diminished 7 because, as you see, B flat major chord, B flat is common. We have also B flat here. They share the same note, but this note should be the root of the triad or the root of the dominant 7th chord. And also here, this is an F7, F dominant 7th chord. The root is F. We have also an F here. And here, there is no common tone between the first chord and second tone, but this is the common tone diminished 7th chord of the next chord. The next chord is F7 once again, and we have also F7 here. So the labeling is CT diminished 7, CT diminished 7. Let's listen to them. The first one. And now the second example. And the last one. So this is a cleaner demonstration of the Roman numerals, and you see here common tone, diminished seventh. Koska put it in parentheses because it is not a functional chord, it is just an embellishing chord. A literature example, let's listen to it. It is taken from a piano sonata by Mozart. The excerpt is in G major, it is very obvious, and it begins with G major chord. And here we have D7 in second inversion, and again G major. And here C major in second inversion, and here we have a diminished seventh chord. According to the spelling, it is A sharp, diminished seventh, but it doesn't matter. You can spell it however you want, and after that, once again, G major. You can try to find a Roman numeral, a suitable Roman numeral for this chord. You can analyze it with Roman numerals, but it will not give a satisfying progression, as I showed in the previous examples. So this is 1, and this is 5, 4, 3, 1 again, and this is 4, 6, 4. This is a pedal. The function is pedal between two tonic chord, and here we have a common tone, diminished 7. Why common tone? Because you see G, the root, is also here. It is one of the members of the diminished seventh chord. And this is a cleaner demonstration of the analysis, and we see also here a textural reduction. Let's listen to it once again. And this is another example by Clara Schumann. Let's listen to it first. The excerpt is in C major, and it begins with tonic chord. And this is also tonic chord. If you take a look at the pitches, we see we have C, F sharp, and D sharp. We don't have an A. That makes the chord actually a triad, but still the labeling remains the same. We will label it as a common tone diminished seventh according to the Koska's terminology. Let's take a look at the following chord. If you look at the pitches, we will see that this is an E half diminished seventh chord, and in the next measure we have A, C sharp, E, G, and B flat. This is an A flat 9, and with the change of the bass position, or we don't have A actually, we can assume this is a C sharp diminished seventh, and the resolution into D minor. D minor is the second degree of C major, and we have a tonicization here. First, we have 2, 4, 3 of 2, and then 5 flat 9 of 2, and here 7 of 2, 7, 7, then 2. After that, we have a borrowed chord. It is a D diminished triad. That means it is 2 diminished sixth. And then we have a cadential 6/4. This is C major in second inversion. And this is a cleaner demonstration. Let's listen to the excerpt once again. And another example taken from Nutcracker Suite by Tchaikovsky. Let's listen to it. The key is D major. We can understand it, especially here. We have a 7 chord. That means we are on the dominant of a key. Go perfect fifth down. You will find D as tonal center. So this is 5. This is also 5. Beginning here, we have 5, 7, etc. The important parts are these two chords. If you look at the pitches, we will see B sharp, D sharp, F sharp, and A. It doesn't matter how we spell the chord. Once again, you can try to find a suitable Roman numeral, but you will not find any Roman numeral that gives a satisfying progression. But you see the root of the chord is A, and it is also here. This is a common tone, diminished seventh. This is also the same chord, common tone, diminished seventh. A cleaner demonstration. Let's listen to it once again. That's all for this lecture. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture.